All right, welcome back to another week of Otter Talk. It is the second week for the Platinum League. We had some great games on stream last week, a couple upsets as well. So this season looks like it's going to be super exciting. We got some great games this evening as well. And a big shout out to Mr. Lean for this sub, and as well as Genetics. Hope you guys are both having a wonderful day. And I'm Traxon. Joining this evening is none other than Theory and a person taking over for the bully. It is Mr. Lean. How is everyone doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm chilling. I'm excited to see what Mr. Lean's takes on Bully's predictions are.
Yes.
Well, as everyone knows, Bully's the script writer for BOL, so
True.
it'll be pretty fun to be in the mind of the genius and see.
You got handed the script before we
Yeah.
started.
Yeah,
Pop Tart,
yeah.
thanks for the tier 1 sub gifted to RA Gaming.
Ra. I think that's actually one of our casters.
I think that's the caster.
Yeah,
that's
what I think
yeah,
too.
I was
Yeah.
about to say. Unless that's yeah, I think it is.
Yes.
All right. Well, I believe it's time to talk about predictions this evening. So, I am on a different computer, so assuming it doesn't explode, we should be good to go. Let's take a look at the predictions this evening. So, there's a lot of people out there. Some of them you might recognize, some of them you might not. So, at the bottom, we have the community. Then the bully, aka Mr. Lean, because they share a single brain cell together. Theory above that. And then starting from the top, we have a new caster. So, he wasn't quite here for this week, so we'll get him slotted in next week for his predictions. And then we have Raw, Eternal Cries, and Rez. And we've kind of changed the graphic up. Big shout out to Pop Tart. So let's kind of start breaking it down between our matches this evening. So, first match we are going to talk about. It is ISU Genie Emerald 1-0, coming off of a 2-0 week up against Blue Esports Fire, who unfortunately have come off of an 0-2 week. But it looks kind of split. There's 3 for Blue Esports Fire and 3 for ISU Genie Emerald. So, Mr. Lean, you and Bully have selected ISU Genie Emerald. Go ahead and walk me through why.
Well, honestly, if I kind of take a look at this team, like you were saying, it was a pretty quick 2-0. And if I look on the side of Blue Fire Esports, I kind of see the same thing there in this instance. It seems like ISU Emerald has a really good ability to build early game leads, capitalize. And I'm kind of predicting. I know Bully doesn't have a game count, but I think it might be another 2-0 sweep versus Blue this week, and Blue's going to be looking at kind of an 0-2 record to kind of start off the season, which could be a death knell in some of these shorter seasons that we have.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, dropping 2 games, not the end of the world, right? But yeah,
of course.
With a 7-week season, you definitely want to pick up some of these games early on if you can. Now, Fairy, the next question to you is: the panel is actually split on this. So, why do you? I know you went for Genie Emerald, ISU, but
yeah,
why do you feel that some of these analysts went with Blue Esports Fire here?
I think it's still really too early to kind of have a cohesive thought on any of these teams and how they're going to play for the rest of the split. So week 2, it might as well just be week 1. I mean, you could base it off of last week's games. It could be a fluke. They could have had a bad game. The other team could have just had a good start. So opting to go for a Blue Esports, if you want to come in here completely, just unbiased, not go by what happened last week. Maybe think that they might have a better time against G&E. I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but they can definitely still pull something out. Blue Esports is definitely not out of it by any means, but just based off the games last week, I'm going to have to say that G&E will definitely have a better time this week.
All right. Well, let's talk about the next matchup that we have tonight. It is Cloud Team taking on Undying Tyrants. Now, both of these teams have started their season off with a crisp, clean 2-0 last week.
Mhm.
And taking a look, it does look like we're split again. So, Fury, go ahead and tell me why you went with the Undying Tyrants over Cloud Team in this best of 3.
So this matchup, I can kind of understand why there is a split between them because of the 2-0. I really couldn't give you an idea as to why I chose Tyrants,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. I just have a feeling that they are going to come out on top. I don't think it's going to be a quick 2-0 like both of
Okay.
these teams did last week. I think it's going to be a very close game.
All right, fair enough. And Mr. Lean, what do you feel that Cloud Team can do here to kind of walk away with this win?
Well, it's a little tough because if you're looking at the perspective from cloud teams and you're taking a look at like Undying Tyrants' games last week, you see that they've really only played 3 out of the 5 champions in both games, which would be Ornn, Leona, and Misfortune. So if you're on Cloud Team and if you're really concerned about that kind of wombo combo the streak can give you, you can obviously take one of those away. But I think it's a little bit of a crapshoot because there's a very easy way for Cloud Team to get out drafted if they're kind of reliant
Mm-hmm.
on banning those. I think from Cloud Teat's perspective, what they'll have to do in this instance is continue to try and maximize. Like they had a really good top lane lead the first game before they swapped them onto a little bit more of a jungler. Maybe they try to abuse the Ornn pick a little bit, or if their top laner leans to more tank tops. I think if Cloud Team wins this series, it'll be through top lane.
All right, fair enough. Now let's take a look at the next matchup. It is UCF Lancers up against Collective Sigma. Now there was one series in Infernal last week that went to the full 3 games, and UCF did walk out 2-1 to start the season off undefeated in the series. But then Collective Sigma, unfortunately, on the other side, have yet to pick up a win at 0-2. Looking across the board, this does seem to be a little bit more one-sided towards the UCF Lancers. So, Fury, go ahead and walk me through why I have selected them here.
It's mainly because Click the Sigma went 0-2 last week. You have UCF Lancer going to be coming out 2-1. That's a big reason, but obviously the bigger reason is because go UCF. I'm biased. No joke. I'm just biased towards UCF. Like that, I just think that they're going to come out. I think they played very well last week. I
Okay.
think they'll continue with that this week.
All right, but you disagree with that, Mr. Lean. So go ahead and tell me why you have selected Collective Sigma here.
I I gotta be honest. Looking at looking at this, I kind of want to swap and say UCF and disagree with Bully's pick here in this
Oh,
instance.
okay.
I'm actually going to go for UCF here because when I'm looking at this, I see that UCF and Collective Sigma have a good old case of inting top laner. We have I am Sithis, who does embody his name, and the other top laner, who I believe his name is Hito Hito, if I remember correctly. Um, there's not really too much that you kind of see out of them in that instance. They have some good KDAs. If I'm looking at this series, I look to more UCF's stronger bot lane play because they were actually doing pretty well in 2 out of the 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of thinking that the bot lane of UCF is going to be the really big thing that's going to take the series for them and actually make it a 2-0 victory this time. They're not going to take 3 games.
All right, fair enough. Let's talk about the next one. It is the final matchup that we will discuss for the Infernal Division. It is TA Spectre up against Titan Gaming Obsidian. TA Spectre 0-2, Titan Gaming 1-2 last week. So both teams looking to pick up the first win of the season. It's important early on, as stated earlier. And looks like you have selected TA Spectre. The rest have selected Titan Gaming Obsidian. So, Mr. Lean, we're going to let you start us off as to why you feel that TGO is going to win.
Well, so for TGO, like even though obviously they lost to UCF last week in a 3-game series, you're still doing things right to make a series that competitive in that instance, especially in just only a best of 3 format. I think that TGO will kind of bounce back from the week they had. Their jungler had a really good performance on Graves, and they actually got a really good performance out of Yone. It looks like on their AD carry as well. So the potential is definitely there for those two lanes to kind of bring them up to speed and hopefully maybe get the rest of the roster together. So I'm kind of banking on jungle AD carry synergy to really bring this series home for them.
All right. And Theory, what do you think that TA Spectre could do here to try to eke out a win in this TO3?
They're just going to take advantage if TG make any mistakes. The whole reason I went for TG is because they took a game off of UCF last week, and I think that kind of speaks to how they're going to play this week. If they run with that, if they're able to continue on that path, they're going to look good. But it's only week 2. No one can really say anything definitive about these teams. So TA just need to bide their time. If they watched any of the games last week, that'd be smart because they could pick up off of anything that TG may have seemed to be compromised as a team. If there's anything that they think they could take advantage of in the middle of the game, that would be their best bet. And realistically, that goes for any team, but I think that is their one thing that they should be looking out for.
All right, fair enough. Well, let's take a look now at Hextech Division. And the first team that we are going to discuss, it is Dragonclaw Cloud up against Absolute Esports. Absolute Esports 2-1 last week, and Dragonclaw a 1-2. So both these teams are pretty close on the standings, at least. Obviously, it's 1 week in, but both of these teams would like to pick up a win to kind of get themselves in that playoff position early on. With that, though, it looks like the community has been split. Two of our casters has selected Dragonclaw, but Fury and the Bully both went with Absolute. So, Fury, go ahead and start us off here.
So Absolute, the main reason I went with them is because I think beating CB Ruby was kind of an upset. And I might not have people agreeing with me on that, but I think that CB were favorites going into that game, and they ended up winning. So based off of that, I would say they're a pretty decent team that should have a pretty solid time tonight.
Okay. And how about you, Mr. Lean? What do you think that they can do, Dragonclaw that is, sorry, to kind of pull out a potential upset against their opponents here tonight?
So I'm just looking through some of the games a little bit. Like it really does seem that the big thing that did get CB Ruby was the top gap. I'm looking at this here, and it looks like Mercy Hawk in that instance had himself a fantastic series, including an 8-1-13 performance on Gangplank. So if Dragonclaw's going to have any hope of pulling this out in that instance, I feel like they definitely need to put some pressure on that top lane in that instance because he was a pretty consistent force throughout the entire series, even turning in a respectable 307 performance on Ornn versus a Cho'Gath.
Yeah. All right. And speaking of CB Ruby, we kind of talked with them last series we discussed. It is CB Ruby taking on Glacial Carnage. Glacial Carnage went 0-2 last week. CB Ruby 1-2. And it looks like it's a split decision. So Fury's gone for Carnage, Bully's gone for CB. Our casters are kind of 50-50. The community has selected CB, but for a team that was so dominant, looks so dominant on paper coming in, like everyone expected them to be one of the top teams in the division. Now, this next question is to Fury. Are you worried if you're a CB fan or player, or obviously just kind of a one-game fluke? And then you went for Carnage here, so what are your thoughts on that?
I only went Carnage because Ruby lost. I think if Ruby, when you come in and you're kind of that hyped up, you end up taking a loss, you go from kind of the top of the ranks to pretty far down low in my mind because of that. So because of their poor performance last week, I would say that Carnage has a better time. If they won last week, I'd probably say that Ruby would have a better time coming into this week. But Carnage, I think, now can come off the back of Ruby's loss and potentially take advantage of that and end up walking away with a win here. I think it even is going to be dominant. I think it will be a 2-0.
Okay, so 2-0 for Carnage. All right, Lean, what's your take? I know Bully went with CB Ruby here. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
I'm kind of sticking with that in that instance because, to that same vein, I also thought CB Ruby was going to be a top tier team in
Okay.
this instance. And I'm kind of looking at this here. One of the big things that sticks out to me is that Reese's Cup, who had himself a pretty decent. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. I'm looking at the wrong person. You'll have to excuse me. Kuma, I mean to say, the mid laner. He had himself an okay performance last week. He definitely ended up more dead than alive, but. On the flip side of that, he's playing against Rindo Kobayashi, who is a role swapped player from top lane. As a top laner myself in that instance, going from that cesspit to any other role is going to mess with you a little bit. So knowing Kuma and knowing CB Ruby and the potential what they have to come versus a team like Glacial Carnage where they're fielding role swapped players, I feel like it's a little crazy to take Glacial Carnage in that instance.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Up next, it is defending champions CB Rush, 2-1 last week. Up against. Oh, I think my mic cut out. Sorry. Up against Titan Gaming Violet. Sorry, I was talking and I was looking at OBS and nothing happened. Sorry. So CB Rush up against Titan Gaming Violet. As we said, CB Rush 2-1. Titan Gaming Violet last week 0-2. Rush played against Dragonflaw Cloud, and Titan Gaming played against Revolution Ice Age. So, looking at the predictions, everyone, again for I believe the second week in a row, has selected CB Rush. So, Fury, take it away.
Yeah, this one I think is kind of just obvious as to why all of us went for CB Rush. Returning champions, still looking extraordinarily dominant coming into last week. Really, no reason to believe they would give up a game. So I have to keep them in my mind as the top of this division.
All right, fair enough. And how about you, Mr. Lean? Do you see a world in which Titan Gaming Violet is able to take down the Titans that are CB Rush?
That depends on how much you think Coach Pizza is important to how the team plays, because CB Rush did lose a player in Coach Pizza this most recent week in that instance, and they're looking for a support and whatnot. So if you value his presence on the team that much, I would say there's possibly a chance that they might take a game, if not the series, just because they may CB Rush may be a little on the back foot a little bit with having a different support and whatnot. But if I'm being honest here, teams like that, having from my own experience, they can survive one player being down if the other four are there. One person isn't as hard to integrate as three or something to that effect.
Fair, yeah.
So it's still CB Rush. I think it'll be CB Rush 2-1 again, however.
All right, well, we have one more game to discuss. It is GSG Sigma taking on Revolution Ice Age. This is our second stream of the night, by the way, on BOL2. I forgot to mention that Cloud Team and Undying Tyrants will be another great game on BOL1 when we go live. But yeah, so GSG Sigma, Revolution Ice Age, and looking at it, it's split a little bit. One caster has gone for Ice Age, and the community, has selected Revolution as well. Everyone else has selected GSG Sigma here. So, Mr. Lean, go ahead and give me the breakdown as to why you and potentially Bully have selected GSG Sigma.
Sigma had a fairly dominant performance last week. Like, you look at some of the players, like they had a random gold player who was a 7-1 Aurelia. You had Pepsi of Time who was 16-3 on Jin. And then both of them actually repeated these performances in this next game with a 10-1 Syndra and a 10-3 Viger. Their carries, mid lane and AD carry respectively, are just dominant, at least from this one game sample size. So I don't expect any less from them going into week 2 against Revolution, who, like, historically has been a fairly weak showing
Okay.
consistently.
And you, Fury, have selected GSG as well. So what are your thoughts on this matchup? Is there a way in which Revolution walks out with a win, or is this a pretty one-sided for you?
I don't know. I think it's still close, but for me personally, I mean, after what happened last week, I voted against both of these teams and was wrong both times. And immediately after those games, when they ended after the 15 minutes or so that they lasted altogether, Decker just goes, "Trust me, believe in me next week." And so that's a main thing as to why I'm going with them, is just because Decker told me that I need to believe, so I'm gonna believe.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that does conclude all the predictions for Infernal and Hextech. Again, in just a few minutes, we're going to throw it to a quick break, and you can catch all the action live on BOL 1 and BOL 2. Our team taking on Undying Tyrants, and GSG Sigma taking on Revolution Ice Age. My apologies. Anything either of you would like to say before we throw it to a break?
I've got nothing myself.
No, I'm pretty good.
All right, just like you say in chat, believe in us, believe in yourselves. Best of luck tonight. We'll catch you guys in just a little bit for the games. Have a wonderful evening.